Hi guys, this is Kip Sensei, and I have a video for you today regarding why conservatism is not small government. Now, conservatives will try to claim that they are supporters of quote-unquote small government. So first I want to explain why they're not any smaller than their Democratic counterparts. I want to talk about the military, the military-industrial complex, spying. I want to talk about the philosophy that they use to justify these claims, and I want to talk about the U.S. Small government experiment. So first we're going to get into why conservative or Republican administrations are not smaller than any other administration. The Republicans, when there's an election going on, let's just say there's an election going on, you have a Republican and Democrat running. The Democrat will want to increase spending and welfare spending and all this kind of stuff. And the Republican, conversely, will claim that they don't want to do these things, that they want to cut spending, that they want to cut taxes, that they want to cut this, that they want to cut that. And when you actually look at the results, that is not the case. The debt has been climbing with every single administration. Every single administration. That's Republican administrations or Democrat administrations. The Republicans, for example, under George W. Bush, who a lot of conservatives still revere in many respects. The younger conservatives, not as much, but there's still a lot of neocons out there. George W. Bush increased spending by 88%. George W. Bush increased spending by 88%. That is not the mark of someone who is small government. Now you would say, well, yeah, but Obama spent more. Yeah, that's true, but the actual percent increase, the jump in the amount of spending was so much greater under the Bush administration. And Obama still was awful, just like all of our presidents. But I'm not justifying Obama, but I'm just trying to say George W. Bush did a lot to increase government spending. So conservatives are not the party of small government in that way. So you're thinking, well, what are they spending on? Now, conservatives will try to tell you that the definition of big government, roughly, is that they spend lots of money on welfare and social programs and all this kind of stuff. And while that is a component of big government, what the conservatives are blind to and what they don't mind the government spending tons of money on is the military-industrial complex, is the building of bases overseas, and all this kind of stuff. They don't mind huge spending on the military, and they don't mind NSA spying and having the government intrude into people's private lives and being able to see what people are doing all the time. And this is all for the purpose of the national defense. So I just kind of want to go over why this premise of national defense is faulty and what it really means. So the United States has, I believe, over 900 military bases around the world. I could be mistaken about that number. But we have tons of military bases all around the world. We have the most advanced, most powerful military to ever exist in the history of planet Earth. Now, people say, well, we need that to protect us, right? A lot of conservatives live under the assumption that the military is there to protect us as citizens, and that's simply false. The United States military their actual purpose is to do whatever the people in power, whatever their bidding is. That's the way that we've set up the system. The fact that we even have a standing military is something that wasn't in the Constitution, but the United States military, the way it's set up, the way that precedent and just the way things go as it's set up, is that the president is the commander-in-chief. You probably have heard that phrase being spoken. The commander-in-chief. So, the bidding of the government, particularly of the executive branch, is what the military is designated to carry out. It is not meant to protect us as citizens. The U.S. has been the aggressor in just about every war that it's fought. That is not the mark of trying to defend the people. So that's really what the military is about. If you look at it's all about playing power games and satisfying government interests. That is what the military's sole function is. Now we have NSA spying, and we have, where the government can look through and examine everything you do all the time. For all I know, they're watching and listening to me right now. Okay? The government can examine everything you do all the time, and that's thanks to Mr. Small Government Conservative George W. Bush with the Patriot Act. Thanks to him, the government is able to spy on everything you do. And a lot of conservatives and Republicans will back up for this, saying, well, it's for the purpose of the greater good and national security, national defense. And that is simply not true. It's supposedly there to prevent terrorism, and it is ineffective at stopping terrorism. There's lots of documents that admit this. I'm going to leave a lot of sources in the description to all this stuff, by the way, so I'm not just blowing smoke. There's going to be a lot of sources breaking down all of this. The NSA is not really all that effective at stopping terrorist attacks, per se. It's really not efficient enough to do that sort of thing. The NSA's purpose is to monitor the doings of individuals that the government sees as being against them, as a threat to them, and especially ideologically. The purpose of the NSA is not to prevent terrorism, because if it was, they would be more effective at it. This idea that the NSA exists for quote-unquote national security is totally ridiculous. It is literally an Orwellian 1984-style spying system in which not only do they spy on all U.S. citizens, but they also spy on people in other countries. The NSA is not there for your protection. The NSA is there to monitor you and to see what you're doing to make sure that you're towing the line of government. And these are all done under conservative, quote-unquote, small government administrations. Quote-unquote, small governments are doing all of these things. So and I don't mean this in a bad way. I like, any conservatives listening, I like you. I would just want to have a conversation with conservatives. And I just want to say, is your ideology internally logically consistent? And based on everything that your candidates do in office, it would appear to not be consistent. It is the fact that, it's big government to spend on welfare, but it's small government to hike up military spending and increase our de facto global empire and spy on the whole population of the planet is not what I would call small government. And so I just really want to challenge conservatives to be internally consistent. So I want to, just say that whenever these government leaders, when they say national defense, when they say greater good, it's not about defending us, it's about defending their power and their interests. National defense is preserving the power of the rulers of the nation. And so that's all I'm going to say about that, but I want to talk about something else, and this is just proponents of small government in general. This can apply to conservatives, and this can apply to minarchists. This can apply to a lot of people who say that, we don't want a big government that does all those things like you're saying. We want a small government. The United States, it was the smallest government ever created in history. It was created as basically a minarchist state. It was created with the intention of being the smallest government ever known to man. Within the first administration, within the George Washington administration, George Washington imposed higher whiskey taxes than what existed during the British colonial rule, and he was putting down rebellions because these people viewed him as a rising tyrant, and he was using lethal force to eliminate his opposition. This was happening within the first administration of the United States government. Since then, roughly a couple hundred years later, the United States went from the smallest government known to man to the biggest, most powerful government in the history of planet Earth, with the largest de facto empire that's ever existed and the ability to spy on everyone in its own country and most likely everyone on the planet. That is what the United States government is now. Within a couple hundred years, which in history is just a blip, it's nothing. A couple hundred years in the span of history is just a blink of an eye. It's less than a blink of an eye. And that is what the United States government has grown into in such a short time. Now, Stefan Molyneux really breaks it down well, and he talks about how this happens. And it's because when you have a small government, the economy flourishes because it's being largely unregulated. And so the government then hikes up taxes to take people's money that they earn, take all this extra wealth, and use it to increase their own power. That is what small governments do. Quote unquote small governments do. So I just want to challenge conservatives. I want to challenge minarchists. I want to challenge statists and say, especially those of you who support small government, quote-unquote small government, is it really small, and is your ideology logically consistent? And when you look at the evidence, when you look at history, when you look at what the U.S. government does, when you look at the theory of what the state is, of what national defense is, of what the greater good is, this is not small government, and tyranny in a different flavor is still tyranny. So anyways, that's going to conclude my video, and I really appreciate you guys watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you on the next one.